special bulletin.
This is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
In 5, check for sound. 4,
It's showtime.
3,
Let's
2,
go.
1,
Welcome to the Pro Audio Suite, a podcast for audio and voiceover professionals. Don't forget to check us out on our Facebook, the Pro Audio Suite Podcast. Now let's get on with the show. From Los Angeles, George Whittam. From Chicago, Robert Marshall. From Sydney, Australia, Robbo. And from sunny Melbourne, Andrew Peters. This is the Pro Audio Suite. Welcome to the Pro Audio Suite. We do have a special guest this week, and that's Corey Dissin. Now, you may be wondering, who is Corey Dissin? Well, let's find out. Welcome, Corey.
Hey, how are you doing, everybody? Good to be here, and I'm glad I've been promoted to special guest.
You are special guest, in fact, very special guest, dare we say. But just give us a bit of background on what you do.
Well, for the last 26, 27 years, I have been the vice president and general manager at Propulsion Media Labs, which is a national audio and video production company in the United States. And we assemble anywhere between 600 and 700 commercials a month. And over the last probably 18 months to 2 years, I've also been operating a social media influencer, marketing coaching type business where I am counseling and mentoring voiceover talent and teaching them how to market themselves, how to navigate social media, how to do content marketing, how to do even just basic sales technique to try to get them to fill their funnel and, keep their bookings.
Yeah. Now, I just want to wind the clock back a bit. You said, how many spots do you do a week?
On average, about 600 to 700 per month.
600 to 700 commercials per month?
Yes, sir.
Wow. So what's the setup where you are?
We have a 5,000 square foot production facility that has 7 full-time salaried producers that work Monday through Friday, 9 to 6 p.m. And I also have 3 they're called account coordinators, but they're better known as project managers. And they help schedule, communicate with the client, traffic, spots, etc. And we have developed, it's more or less an assembly line, a factory kind of situation. And that's kind of our unique selling position, is that we work very quickly. We work under duress. We take all of the types of commercials that you have very little time to turn them around. We often get spots ordered in the morning and they have to be done that afternoon. And some of those are fully produced video spots with motion graphics, etc.
Wow. So, but your main bread and butter radio, or is it a mix of both, TV and radio?
And anymore, the hot item is actually video, but I mean, obviously, audio is a huge component of theirs. Everything that is built for video is done in After Effects, but all of the soundtracks, the voiceover, music, sound effects, they're mixed first in Pro Tools before our video guys cut video to them.
So when you say video, you're not actually shooting, you're just taking stock, or you're getting supplied with video content?
It's a mix of both. Our core competency is the post-production, the motion graphics, especially in After Effects. We have libraries of footage, whether that's stock footage our clients sent us from their particular location. We also do have 2 of our own cameras that will go out on location. Within a 2-hour radius of Philadelphia, we'll go out and do a shoot, and we have a 4K camera and an HD camera. GoPros and jib arms and teleprompters and all that stuff. I mean, we're a full-fledged production company, but our forte is the post. Most of the footage is sent to us by other entities.
So like if you guys do the full tilt boogie, the whole package, it's probably maybe more of a, I'm assuming, but maybe a smaller client that might do that. And maybe the bigger clients, they have several different teams involved.
It's a mix. I mean, we will work with a mom and pop, whether it's a small advertising agency in a big market, or it could even be a large agency in a tiny market. that doesn't have the overhead or the means to do all the fancy post-production, but at the same time, we're sort of the secret weapon or the vendor of choice by a lot of big names, which I can't disclose, but that come to us because we have that certain. I feel like Liam Neeson in the Taken movies. We have a unique set of skills.
Right.
What I try to communicate to CEOs or heads of agencies that might be interested in hiring us, there are plenty of very large production companies that, in a Hollywood setting or a Manhattan setting, that I would equate those as like large teaching hospitals, where there's these huge entities with tons of people. What we equate ourselves, we're the ambulance.
Okay.
That's a good analogy. And you know what? Somebody had a client tell me that I should wear a paramedic's uniform.
Why not?
So what do you know?
Because you are a doctor with what you do, I'm sure.
She's like, you save lives. You should wear a paramedic's uniform.
Well, George, imagine how many of your customers go into cardiac arrest before you save them.
Yes, a lot. And you were talking the other day about getting a stethoscope, so maybe that could be the first part of your new uniform.
There's something going on here. Yeah. There seems to be an theme growing here.
There is a medical analogy in the air. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Now, just wondering, with your what is your market base? I mean, are you basically Philadelphia, that area, or are you global?
We are heavily saturated in the tri-state area, which is Philadelphia, South New Jersey, New York. But even though we have a heavy saturation there, I would say that only makes up 20 to 30% of our business. We're all over. And when I mean all over, mostly all over the continental United States. We have clients in Canada. We worked in England. We have lots of spots that air in Europe for all sorts of reasons. But our main customer, our sweet spot is that medium-sized advertising agency in Pick a Market, USA.
So with your talent, when you're organising, say, a voiceover, which is obviously what we're interested in, where do you source from? Do you source people who obviously have their own studio, or do you get them in?
Well, the days of bringing them in for us are long gone. We had 2 beautiful whisper rooms that we spent all kinds of money on and had them install. And George, your friend Lane Massey, helped us out with both of those. But anymore, if someone has a quality home studio, that's mostly the talent that we're using. And we have our own sort of internal database of talent that we go to, and we pitch them online. We have a little, website that has all their demos on there, and we have our preferred bunch. We like to call them the top 100 most qualified non-union talent in the United States.
Oh, so you are purely non-union?
Correct.
Okay.
Is Paul still doing stuff through you guys, or is Paul fully retired? What's his status?
Man, I just saw Paul, believe it or not. I was in Florida traveling with my son, and he lives in that area now, and we hung out for an afternoon, and he's doing great. I mean, the guy lives literally on a golf course. He's golfing 6 days a week. But he does voice still. He's got a nice studio in his house, but it's not the same where he has to be, chained to an ISDN line waiting for sessions. He has much more flexibility in his schedule. So he has little batches where he'll do, maybe 2-3 hours in a row, and then he's out, and he's got 2 small children.
Nice. Oh,
so
cool.
he's doing great.
Well, man, I haven't seen him in forever. And for you guys listening, Paul Turner, you may not know his name, but if you're my age and you lived in the U.S., you know his voice because he was the in-show. Is that what you'd call him for Howard Stern?
Well,
he was the announcer.
He was the guy who said, and forgive the imitation because it's going to sound nothing like him, but he was most famous for, "You're listening to the Howard Stern Show." Yeah.
I mean, his voice to me in high school was as famous as Howard's.
Could you imagine when I first started working for him, and I'm about 19, 20 years old, and I was still living at home, and he would call my house, and my parents would answer the phone?
So amazing. Well, I mean, and just the timeline of this whole thing, 26 years is kind of mind-blowing. 26 years, that would place us back in 1993. 93? 93.
Yeah, that's correct.
I was in college at that time. And then I got out in 97, and then I started networking with, in the business. I was an intern at Sigma in Philly.
Mm.
And then I was hanging out with Lane Massey and my cousin Andy and playing, doing music jams. And through that connection, that's how I got to meet you guys, because Lane brought me in just to like an intern.
I can honestly say that Paul Turner changed my life.
Yeah.
I thought I wanted to be on air because before I met Paul, I was interning at WISP, and that's where I met Lane as well.
Oh, that's the connection. Okay. Uh-huh.
And 2 weeks into my internship, they fired the entire air staff. That's when YSP had a format change.
Wow.
Whoa.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that scared the bejesus out of me because, I got a bad...
disposable. Look how disposable you are.
Well, yeah, and I got a terrible habit. I like to eat 3 times a day. I'm a big fan of stability. And here I was, a college kid, seeing all of, these people I revered, the Ed Shockeys of the world, who I just thought was, had the coolest voice, and he was like a legend in the market. And they just booted him right out. And I'm thinking, man, what's the next coolest thing to be on air? And that was production. And I walked into Paul's studio there at One Bala Plaza, and that's where I met him. And I saw the multi-track and the big console. I'm thinking, man, all right, this has got me written all over.
Yeah. So was he doing production for Howard Stern at that time, or was he doing other stuff?
He was voicing and producing for Howard, as well as he was doing a lot of things for Infinity in general, because they had a lot of other syndicated talk shows at the time too, whether it was the Grease Man or Don and Mike. He was doing stuff for The Fan in New York, K-Rock in New York, WJFK in DC, and he was voicing and producing. He was the production director basically for Infinity. And I just kind of came along at the right time because I was a pain in his butt. He allowed me to hang out with him. I would like get his lunch. I remember driving to the Olive Garden to pick him up a salad or doing, typing up reel-to-reel labels on a typewriter and dropping them in the FedEx for him, because he can get his dry voice out for the end of the day. And he would leave at 5, 6 o'clock, and he would basically leave me the keys to the studio and say, here, teach yourself how to be an audio producer. And I stayed there day after day, night after night, till 2, 3 in the morning, Saturdays, Sundays. My friends thought I was nuts. They would call me. They would be down the shore and they would be partying. And what are you doing, Cora? What are you doing? So I'm learning how to do this stuff, man. And that's what happened. He would critique. I'd make little cassettes, and he would critique on how I would use the compressor or how I was using the effects chain or whatever else. And that's kind of how I learned how to be a multi-track producer.
That's interesting. It's a shame Robbo's not here, actually, because this is almost his story.
Yeah, I know.
Very, very similar.
Robbo had a conflict tonight. He's our primary producer and is usually the one who's going to he will mix the show.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
But I love that you had that starting with one, that one mentor guy. And for me, that certainly was Lane, in terms of getting into the radio production business, and like literally live remotes and all that kind of stuff. So cool that those stories parallel each other in a way, and geographically so as well.
Very lucky. I feel very lucky, very privileged. I mean, not many of my peers, and I'm not even talking about, media industry peers. I'm talking about, guys when I was working as a bouncer, my friends, the guys I would go out and hang out with who went on to become cops or sell insurance, whatever they're doing. None of them are doing the same thing that they did when they were 20 years old. I am.
Yeah, it's a difference, isn't there? I think this industry certainly, once you're in, you never get out. And why would you?
No, man, it was cool, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it still is. I mean, but now, now it's a little different. I fired myself as a producer back in probably 2001 and got more into the sales and marketing end of things and actually managing all the other employees of the company. And that's kind of where my talents, I guess, lie, is in, marketing. And I've been running with that since, whether it's marketing propulsion and now, in this new type of, I guess, incarnation of marketing and branding other voice talent, which is it's been cool for me to be able to utilize those skills for other people now beyond the bounds of Propulsion Media Labs.
So when you're branding a voice talent, just run us through what you actually do.
Okay. So it's a team process, number one. I mean, it's usually after there's been significant conversation with that particular talent, because we got to see, what their skill set is. And then I often give that talent a homework assignment to do a little self-exploration. I literally say, open up a document in Word and start typing. I don't want you to write fancy ad copy or anything polished. I just want you to write stream of conscious notes, everything from what you think your voice sounds like if you had to describe it, to the types of jobs you typically get, to the types of jobs you typically want to get, or what do you aspire to achieve to record one day. I ask for things like, what are your hobbies? What type of music? I need to know everything I can in a couple of pages that is you. And generally what I'm able to do is after my conversations with that talent, after reviewing their existing online presence, reviewing their audio demos as they are currently, I'm able to review that document. I'm able to extract certain keywords that patterns start to develop. And I'm able to take those and group them and then kind of boil them down and propose a brand or a tagline or a slogan based upon what that talent has communicated with me. I'll give you two examples. I have one client who his passion is running. And this talent, George. He'll remain nameless, but he's a client of yours. Mm-hmm. His passion is running. He runs marathons. He does charity runs. When he exercises, it's all about running. He's something he's very, very passionate about. But he also enjoys doing voiceover. So after finding out all this information and finding out what kind of guy he is, and he's a hard worker and he wants to do right by his clients and turn things around quickly, we came up for him running your voiceovers to the finish.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And that's something that he could put his weight behind because it is him. I have another client who worked with me. And I'll be glad to give this particular guy's name. His name's Rob Moreira. Rob Moreira is awesome. Please visit his site. I'll give him a free plug. But he is bilingual, English and Spanish, trained actor, stage, does the voiceover. He has all of these different skills. And the more and more I kept looking at all these different talents he has, it's like there's so much more that he can do. And it turns out his name is spelled Moreira. So for him, it's pretty simple. Get more with Moreira. So that's just two little examples on how that works. But it usually comes out of some self-exploration exercise with the talent. And then I have my little secret recipe that I use.
It's interesting you talk about the people's perception of themselves. How many people do you come across that actually get it right?
Most folks don't get it at all.
Yeah.
Because that's why they come to me. It's because they're stumped and they're afraid to stick their neck out because they're worried they're going to get it chopped off. So if they can have a mirror held up to them, which is me as an objective, somewhat objective resource to say, this is how I think you're perceived if I'm the voice casting audience, because I have the unique position where I've not only been the voiceover seller, my role at the production company, I've been the voiceover buyer in that we recruit talent to work with us. So I've been in that chair deciding, does that talent get my attention or doesn't he or she? So I take that and I use that, I would like to think to my advantage to help give them a perspective that they might not otherwise think on their own.
Yeah. Because I do find that a lot of talent are trying to do work that they actually are not suited for. But they feel they are suited for it. And it takes someone, a third party, to say, you know what? You're never going to crack that marketplace.
Well, that's a good point that you made. And I do, more often than not, I have to kind of shoot straight with them and say, look, stop trying to be all things to all people. You're not going to be doing animation. Your best bet is you are the warm and fuzzy, you're going to do the cancer patient spot, or you're going to do the calm narration or the audiobook. You're not going to be doing the Ren and Stimpy or something like that. I'm dating myself, George, I'm sure, by using that reference.
Yes.
But I have to often have that conversation with, hey, look, this is kind of where I see you. And sometimes there's a little bit of headbutting that goes on because, that talent has aspirations. They have goals and dreams. But I try to get them to grab the low-hanging fruit first, because it's all about generating revenue. The more revenue you have, the more flexibility you have to go get more performance coaching in that particular genre, for example. And then if there's something just outside that initial zone of, if you're really good at X, but Y is not too far away, then we try to hit that. But I try, in what I do with talent, I try not to get too involved with the performance aspect. That's for the talent coach. And I can give you a million names of those people who do that really, really well. I don't profess to be one. I have no desire to be one. I like to stick to the marketing.
It's interesting you say that, because a lot of talent, when their careers start to get a bit shaky, end up becoming coaches or demo makers or anything like that kind of area. Sometimes I wonder if you're a talent trying to tell a talent, you're kind of both on the same side of the window, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. I would call it even a conflict, because a lot of times, and look, I'm not going to pick on anyone in particular, but there are a lot of talent coaches out there that are still talent, that are trying to fill their own books. So how much are they really rooting for you to succeed if they're trying to coach you?
Yeah.
I speak about that very plainly with my clients. It's like, you don't have to worry about that with me. I'm not trying to land representation with Mark Gus. I'm just a marketing guy. That's all I want to be for you.
Yeah.
Same here. When I'm working with my client, I've had the opportunity more than once to enter voice acting field, and I've even had a little bit of taste of some coaching, and oh my gosh, I just never ever wanted to be in competition with any of my clients.
Yeah.
Nah,
I did not want to voice. Yeah, I didn't want to moonlight or just, it just never felt right. So I totally understand. And that's I think a boon or a real selling point to your folks, is that you're coming at this from the right side of the glass, so to speak.
Yeah, and I know my place. I'm not trying to blur the line.
But it's also like, if I was going to get any advice from anybody, I want to get advice from someone who will potentially book me for a job, not from somebody who's actually competing with me. Because I mean,
well said.
And,
right.
And the other thing is that people who are doing like talent like myself, we don't really know what the booker is thinking. We assume we do, but we don't really. And so if I was to get advice, I want to know what that person is thinking, what that person really wants, because there's no point me creating a product that nobody wants.
And you want to hear something kind of interesting? And I was just having this discussion with a talent today who's considering working with me, a guy who's very well established, who's really, really good. And I was fired up that he even reached out to me. But I had this conversation, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, but bear with me here. When voice talent market themselves, now, of course, you have to have a certain degree of chops. You have to have the gear. You have to have a clean sounding room. You can't just plug the USB in a laptop and call yourself a talent. You have to have the background. But that aside, the point I made to him was, because he was saying, I put spots up on social media and I don't get a lot of response. And I even got some backlash from a client for doing that. And my response to him was, no one cares what you sound like. Now, you're probably both scratching your head right now saying, what? Stick with me.
I'm sticking there. I'm hanging in there.
Hang in there. Here we go.
Hang on to every word.
So, like I said, under the premise that you got your studio dialed in correctly and you have the basic tools, like how to interpret a script, and you have the basic quote unquote talent, what's going to separate you from everybody else from actually getting hired? And the point that I was making is your ability to be noticed, to stick out, and to be remembered. Those things don't have as much to do with how good your demo sounds as you might think. They want to get to know you as a person. Think of, where you might go for a haircut or who fixes your car. There are plenty of people that have the technical expertise to use a pair of scissors or to fix brakes on a car or change the oil, but you like doing business with people you like, people you trust, people that are authentic. And what I'm trying, the gospel that I'm trying to spread is how to do that mechanically through the computer, through the social media platforms, for example. That's the huge disconnect that a lot of these talent have, because unfortunately, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but they think, wait a minute, I sound really good. I have a great sound. Everyone I've ever talked to says I have a great sounding voice. I have, bi-coastal representation. I sound great. I'm doing promo work for this station. The voiceover, that stuff helps. It gives you a little credibility, but it's not going to make you stick out. There's 2 million people on this blue marble of ours calling themselves voice talent. What are you going to do to be remembered? Now, we're not telling you to do something silly, but there is a way to stand out from the crowd with how you brand and how you market yourself. And that's kind of the stream that I'm swimming up.
The interesting thing is when you say about being someone standing up and being different, I must admit that what I find, and I've seen over the years, is that people say they want something different, but they really don't. They want the same as they had yesterday and the same as that person had the day before.
When I say something different, not so much in the performance, more of what can you do to be remembered, to get your name to go from the bottom of the stack to the top. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And forgive me if I got ahead of you there and if I interrupted you, because I gathered that you meant that you were kind of coming from the angle that if you're in a session and they hired you because you sound unique and we want this, you're a unique read, then you get in there and you're doing the same old that they could have got from somebody else.
Yes, well, that happens as well, yeah. I do find that. And I was kind of I sort of took a bit of a turn after what you've been saying, but I that is something that I've come across a lot.
Well, they equate new with bad.
Yeah, they equate new with this could go wrong and I'll get my ass kicked. So
they're afraid to take a chance. Just look at Hollywood film. If that gives you any idea,
a lack of safety.
They're making the same damn movies.
Yeah.
Every 10 to 20 years in Hollywood. Nobody wants to take a chance.
Nope.
I was going to ask you about marketing. We don't have to get into give us top 10 tips, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Don't need to go there. But what's a real no-no when you're launching a voiceover business, you're making your website, you're coming up with an idea for a brand. What's something that someone who's casting or an agent is going to look at and go, whew, amateur. Oh, man. What's something that stands out to you?
I am prepared and willing and excited to share with you, in my estimation, the number one mistake voice talent make when they market themselves on social media.
I'm going to take a big breath here.
Yeah. Here we go. Drum roll, please. The number one mistake that voice talent make when they market themselves on social media is they include the ask in their communication. So if they're posting on to LinkedIn or to Instagram or Facebook, I see so many posts that say, IVRs go better with a great voice. And then they have the link to listen to my demo today. You want a commercial that can be remembered. And the best way to get remembered is to have a great voice. I see it over and over again. Or it's Halloween. Do you need a scary voice for your spot? I cringe when I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are you don't do that, because there's two things that happen. That post either gets ignored or deleted.
Yeah. Or both.
Or both. Yeah.
In that order.
Exactly. So yeah, that's a big thing. And then I'll give one other no-no, is that most talent don't understand the rigors of the brick by brick approach to social media. They'll say, "Oh, I'm gonna do some posts. I'm going on social," and they'll put up a post on Monday, and then again on Wednesday, and then maybe on Saturday, and then the following Saturday, and then before you know it, they give up.
Yeah.
And
I'll buy some followers.
Yes, and social media does not work that way. It's a war of attrition. It's got to be constant. So most talent don't get in the game, number one, or stay in the game long enough and understand that it's a long game. It takes, day after day, post after post, interacting constantly. It is a bit of a time suck. That's the pushback you'll get, but it pays off. I mean, and I can just even tell you just from my end, from my marketing consulting business, was built exclusively on the back of LinkedIn.
Wow. Okay.
It's a great tool. I call it the Swiss Army knife of social media because it does so many different things. It's not just a bulletin board. It's not just a place to show off your work experience. It's a portfolio. It's a networking function. It's a database of contacts. It's a lead list. It's good. I can go on and on and on. If you're in voiceover, especially, or if you're in media production, if you're not using LinkedIn, and I would venture to say if you're any type of entrepreneur, small business owner, executive, if you're not on LinkedIn and doing some degree of content marketing on LinkedIn, you're really missing out.
The interesting thing is, and my wife talks about this all the time, if she's about to either employ someone or she's working with someone, she'll check out their LinkedIn profile. If they don't have one, then the question is, why haven't you got a LinkedIn profile? What are you hiding?
I get it. Yep. I mean, I use it. I use that tool the same way. I would put that in the reconnaissance phase there.
Yep.
I mean, to get background on either a vendor I might hire, a future client, an employee, an intern, whatever. I mean, I'm definitely, trying to do a little background check on them. And because you can get references that way, you can see who they're connected to.
Yep.
I mean, it's not exactly, you're going to find people, with the red Solo cup at the keg, like Facebook or something, but you can do a pretty thorough business search on candidate X or vendor Y.
But I've got a question for you, and because you're marketing voiceover talent, what is, and this sounds a bit selfish really, but if you were to get someone who wasn't American, that you were marketing into America, and it doesn't have to be me, it could be somebody else, but how differently would you sell that brand into the US?
So that's a great question. And I have worked with a couple of voices from across the pond, let's say. Here's the plus, is that there aren't a lot of folks from down under marketing themselves in the United States that live in the United States, meaning transplanted citizens. So so you're going to be unique from the start, in that there's less competition for that type of voice in the geographic area. The downside to that is there are less available projects that demand that type of voice in our area. Not everyone is going to do a spot for Outback Steakhouse.
Yeah.
There was a time I can remember specifically, we worked with a theme park in the Southeast, and the whole gist of their facility was safari, the Outback, and they had an Australian accented spokesperson that I can't even remember the gentleman's name we used to work with, who was in Australia, that we used, and he was good too, man. That was such a long time ago. Forgive me for not remembering. That information help at all?
Yeah. No, I'm just curious because years and years and years ago, when I was a kid growing up in the UK, there used to be pirate radio stations, which is showing my age, long before Ren and Stimpy. But
one of the best movies ever is pirate radio.
So there was pirate radio, which was out of the limits. So it was either out at sea or on continental Europe. And one station in particular was Radio Luxembourg, coming out of Luxembourg. And the voices they used to use there were mainly, as it turns out, which I didn't realise at the time, were Australians. But their accent was quite soft in the, as far as Australian accents were concerned. So they kind of branded them as mid-Atlantic. And that became that accent that was not American, wasn't English, and hence the term mid-Atlantic. But it actually really was just a mild Australian accent. Do you think that kind of an accent would ever work?
I would say yes, and I would even say it would probably have a place in the automotive sphere for luxury brands. That like a tier 3 automotive, which is the dealer level. If they're selling, Lexus or Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar always has some type of European accented talent, or British, Aussie, etc. And there are thousands of those dealers all over the country, and that could be a niche for somebody.
But just something that's a bit different that people go, wow, what's that? That's unusual.
You're preaching to the choir. I love that deep, resonant, edgy, accented voice. I think that is really cool. I mean, there's a guy, I'm pretty sure he's got some reputable management like in New York, but you ever heard of Chris Kent?
Oh, yeah, I know. Christopher Kent, yeah, CKUK, yeah.
Yeah, that guy is inhuman. I mean, he's just really talented. And we worked with him a handful of times back in the day, but I think he's doing some trailery type stuff here in the States. But I think there is a place for it. And especially when you got the Howard Parkers of the world, and they tend to capture a lot of that type stuff.
Yeah. Chris Kent's an interesting one, and I was going to use him when you talk about marketing, because it was Maurice Tobias that came up with the idea of CKUK.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Chris and I worked together. I mean, he was, I guess, part of the Propulsion stable of guys for a few years back in the early 2000s, maybe up until 2003 or 4. And just got to the point where he couldn't afford him anymore. He's too damn good.
It was funny because Chris and I, we both, about the same time, I guess, we both set up Source Connect. So we'd do tests with each other.
And we used to work with another couple of fellas. Peter Twist was one I can remember from way back when, he's got a huge voice. And there's another fella, Chris Grant, his name is, he's just monstrous, this guy's voice. I mean, just deep and ballsy, and he's got that accent. And we would always use him on Halloween type stuff,
Yeah.
Kind of that Lurch, Addams Family Lurch guy with that, you couldn't even, indescribable.
The way I sound after I drink 3 liters of beer the next morning.
And you drop the glass boot.
Yeah.
Getting back to the talent and what you expect from talent, what are the expectations as far as the quality of sound that you're going to get from someone's home studio, for instance?
So, we're not measuring to the level of, examining noise floors and all that stuff. We're letting our ears make the decision if there's hums or hisses or distortion or things like that obviously would disqualify someone. And I have a couple of different producers who will review demos, and we'll do dry voice auditions to make sure that, because who knows if they get their demo recorded at their home studio. So I always like to get a mic chain test out of their own shop. But the things, honestly, the decision-making qualities beyond the audio, we tend to look for ease of use. Is their ego checked at the door? Do they return a phone call quickly, or do they respond to email fast? Are they available? We have because we're doing this high volume of commercials that we talked about earlier in the podcast, we don't have time for prima donnas.
No.
We want folks that are roll their sleeves up, kind of have a blue collar attitude. Like, hey, let's get it done. They know that check's going to show up in 30 days or less. We're really good about that. We don't spend a lot of time, over directing. We just want to get things done. The people we bring on board, we trust know what they're doing. Sometimes we got to hold their hand a little bit if we have a fussy client. But, my team is like, hey, get it done. We're paying you because you know what you're doing. You don't need us to tell you. Just get it done. Here's some direction. Go.
I was reading that as you guys don't do a lot of direction, or do you direct them? How do you do? Is it mostly self-directed for the talent?
Mostly, I would say maybe 15 to 20% are directed, and we just do them over a plain old POTS line. We're not doing anything. We had 3 Zephyrs going at one point back in the day, and we got rid of all of them. And We're fine with, getting the uncompressed audio a few minutes later after the session. We're totally cool with that. We have some bigger clients that, want to get their hands dirty a little bit. So we'll set up a little conference call and they certainly have liberties to direct at will, but they're paying for that privilege because they're big fish.
Right.
It sounds very similar to the model when we talked to Adrenaline in Vegas. Do you know those guys? Do you know Matt at Adrenaline?
I don't know Matt, but I've heard of Adrenaline before.
Yeah, it sounds kind of similar, the structure of your business.
Well, I call it organized chaos. That's our everyday.
Yeah.
Now, with connectivity, you said you got rid of the ISDN boxes. So what are you actually using to connect with talent?
Like I said, it's just a plain old phone line.
Oh, okay.
If we're directing them, yeah.
We call it a POTS line here in the US.
Line, yeah.
Plain old telephone system.
Yep. Yeah, we got rid of, like I said, we had 3 sets of ISDN lines going at one point, and we disconnected all of them. The Zephyrs are now fancy doorstops. Not much of a need for those anymore.
Would you believe I just bought one on eBay?
$50.
I think it's an extreme $50.
Get out
shipped
of
to my
town.
door.
You're kidding.
In Philadelphia, it's worth $50.
Yeah, I heard you can get a boot full of beer for that.
That's how much I think it was damn close to that. No, I mean, for the price of a beer, you can buy a Telezephyr Extreme.
You would have never thought of that.
Those are $4,000 plus.
Oh, yeah.
US $5,000 box.
I mean, you would spend $50 on a few minutes of an ISDN call.
Right.
Oh, my God.
I know, it's insane. And the only reason I have it is because I have clients that have other stuff like a Road Runner or Road Warrior or these other brands, Musicam and stuff. But they have no freaking clue how to use them. And I'm not that much better than they are at using these weird sort of non-standardized units. And I'm like, man, just swap it out with this thing that I can explain to you how to use, because they're so readily available now. It's crazy. And there's actually new technology now that lets you plug one of these things basically into the internet.
Yeah.
And so you're actually using ISDN, but it's over the internet. And that's not even a bridge. It's actually something called virtual ISDN or VISDN. So it allows talent to literally have SPIDs and give them out, but not even have an ISDN line.
Where can you even get an ISDN line now?
Well, this is chaos. Talk about chaos. I have clients all over LA who are just losing their lines. They're just losing their service. But they don't lose it in a way where the phone company, because I guess maybe they're not allowed, maybe legally the FCC says they can't do or whatever it is, but they can't just make the line go away. But what they can do is make it unbelievably a pain in the neck to have it. So they'll do things like, oh, we didn't realize you had active lines. Sorry about that. When we, the lines just will be disconnected.
Oh, boy.
For no reason. Or your bill, you're no longer on a contract. In fact, as of July in the States, there are no contracts for ISDN. So next month, your bill will be twice what it was the month before. That's happening now too. AT&T, you're on notice. They're doing this like crazy with voice actors. And it's a nightmare. So, but it's funny. There are still clients of mine who still have it, still use it, and pay $50 a month for it. And I have others who pay $500 to more a month.
It's unbelievable.
Well, Scott said he paid his bill, didn't use the box in his beach house, and it was $800 for the month.
Right. He didn't even notice. It was just, they just ramped the price up. And they do it until they reach a threshold of pain for the user. And so they know you're going to hit the threshold of pain eventually. And then they're just going to go, Uncle, I don't need it that bad. Bye. And that's what they're doing. And that's their business model of ending the use of ISDN.
Yeah, here it's different.
That's literally
different here. They've actually given us notice that I think mine was going to be shut down September of next year.
There's rumors that 2020 is the year that it will go away. That's sort of the understood date or the year. We don't know the date, but the year. So, anywho, yeah. So for what you guys do, Corey, it's just not necessary to have all that tech.
I mean, with the internet, the way the internet is now, with everything so high speed, and I mean, not to talk about the glory days again, but it just reminded me of a funny story when we're talking about ISDN and everything. I can remember in the infant days of transmitting audio on the internet, Paul Turner used to voice a television show for the CW called The Lost World. And they were one of the first to start requesting audio sent as an AIF file over the internet. And I can remember sending a 30-second promo. So we're talking 30 seconds of mono, took 45 minutes.
Oh, boy.
I can remember laying on the floor on my back, watching that little progress wheel just inch, just waiting. And I was saying to Paul, man, I could have had this out. We could have had it out on DGS, or we could have, put it in on a DAT or whatever and dumped it in the box. And he's like, this is the future. I was like, okay, here we go.
I remember when I was in college, freshman year, the MP3 encoding came out. And to make one MP3 of a WAV file, it would take your computer it wasn't like seconds. It was like minutes or hours. And just to make a single MP3. And that's just where we're going. I mean, that's just the way things are going.
I can still remember the days where you rented video. And basically, you're going home, it's 6 o'clock, you press the button and hoped it was going to be finished by the time you got in the morning.
Right. We've had to deal with that problem as recently a couple of years ago, even with fast computers.
Yeah.
That's why the new Mac Pro is coming out. For $5,000 US minimum.
Yep.
For one
I
of those
remember
things.
with our internet in Australia, which is appalling to say the least. It's better than it was. But when I first set up down here, I would sit here, send a file of maybe 100 meg or something, not huge, press the button, and it would just be 1 hour, 40 minutes. You go, great, okay. So, so you go off and have lunch, come back and do whatever you wanted to do while that thing's sending. But then the NBN came in, which is fiber optic. And I remember the first thing I sent was like a 200 meg file. And I hit the send button, looked away and looked back, and it was like, I must have actually put the empty file in because it's gone. But it was done. It went like in about 2 seconds as opposed to 1 hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, man. Yeah, a good fiber network is as fast as your own local, your own LAN, your own in-house network. And that's what the new 5G network will be eventually, too, for mobile.
It's a beautiful thing.
What's going to happen with the 5G? Because we were talking about that with Robert. There was something weird about it, and I can't remember what he said now.
It's a controversial technology because it uses so much power, and it won't go through barriers. It's almost line of sight. There's a lot of real world issues that are going to make it impractical for any real, you're not going to sit in your car and stream an 8K video over 5G anytime soon. Not that you'd need to. It's coming. It's coming, but we got a long way to go before it's useful. I mean, heck, the 4G on my phone in most cases gets 50 to 80 megabits a second. I mean, it's changed a lot. Corey, are you guys doing what you guys do? I love gear. Are you guys the market for the new Mac Pro?
I would assure you that there's a producer or two that would love to see that under the tree come December.
Yeah.
I'd be lying to you otherwise. But, they're always coming to me about this upgrade or this new machine. But, when you have, 15 machines to maintain and, sometimes it comes down to silly things like budgets.
Yeah, budgets. Right. Yeah.
But if you landed the right client and the demand was for a certain product, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now we have a reason to buy this widget.
That happens all the time, but we have to hit that landmark first.
Exactly. And I always tell my clients, you buy the gear when you've got the jobs to support it. Like they go out, they overinvest in gear, and then they're just barely auditioning. And it's just like, no. Start earning that gear by winning some great jobs. Then go buy the Neumann U87 or whatever that bling mic you want is. Then do that. That people overinvest or cart before the horse all the time.
And we have a hand-me-down system at our shop. It's the senior guys get the newest machine, and then the other ones get passed down the line to the junior folks. And
It's like a family.
Yeah, totally. A large family.
Totally. Pass the hand-me-downs.
I mean, that's just good business. I mean, it's
business.
You got to be smart with that. And if you can, thank goodness we have a really good IT service. It's not George the Tech Whittam, but we have a good IT service that just in general computer maintenance.
IT is a different thing. That's for sure.
That keeps our software in check, and if there's help desk things or hardware issues, they'll come rush out and give us a loaner, et cetera. I mean, so our guys understand that they got to wait in line.
So tell me, with your business at the moment, what do you see changing? What do you see as the future?
So are we talking production or are we talking marketing?
I reckon we'll do them separately. First of all, production.
Okay. I mean, production, there's more and more, we're getting more and more requests for I would call the non-traditional production lengths, meaning very short length things that to accommodate, like 6-second Facebook ads and
like the pre-rolls.
Pre-rolls, yeah. We're doing tons of 10s and 15s and 6s. It's constant. I mean, we're getting way more of those. And then on the opposite end, we're getting things that go beyond the bounds of 60 seconds. We're getting 90 seconds, 120s, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, because more people, you don't necessarily have to pay for an infomercial or that time on broadcast anymore. So it's become a little more democratic that the smaller players can get larger productions because they could put them on their social media pages or their websites.
Okay, so now in a very crowded marketplace, how do you handle marketing and how do you see that moving?
Whether you're a voice talent or for what I do for the production company, they're kind of one and the same, because this was a realization that I had to make about 1.5 to 2 years ago, because I marketed Propulsion Media Labs in every shape, way, function you could imagine, from going to ad club meetings to paying for advertising to search engine optimization to thousands upon thousands of cold calls, emails, RFPs, proposals, sending packages in the mail, trinkets, whatever. We have marketed that production company in every way you can think of. I've had sales staffs of 5 or 6 and 1 and 2 and by myself. We've done it every which way, backwards and forwards. And I had to figure out that because of the way social media has changed the marketing landscape, that folks cared less. Like I remember we talked about earlier that no one really cares like how you sound. I had to come to that realization about no one really cares that we work for this client or we have this sexy gear or whatever it is. They want to buy from people they know and trust. So I really had to invest in personal branding, was getting people to understand who I am, what I'm about, what makes me different. And you, for lack of a better description, it's in a way sort of celebritizing yourself. And, I've created, it's not a persona because it's me. I mean, I don't know how to do anything different, but I'll go into meetings now, or I'm going to be seeing a bunch of people tomorrow. I bet it happens tomorrow that they'll say, "Hey, you're the Go Get It guy," because they know me from the Go Get It podcast, or I have the Go Get It t-shirt, or every social media post, I'm encouraging and urging my followers to go get it, go chase their dreams, go capture their goals. And that's what has really driven not only my success for my marketing consulting and those clients, but I've seen that same residual positive effect on the production company. It's because we had a little dip there, a couple of years ago, and we've since rebounded, and it's been gangbusters.
It's really interesting how marketing in America is so much different to probably the Brits and Australia, where you can actually build a celebrity profile and no one seems to have an issue with that. But if you do that here, they'll just come and slap you down pretty quickly.
Really?
Yeah.
When you say slap you down, what does that mean?
They'll just think you're getting a bit ahead of yourself. You think you're a bit special, do you, mate? Well, you're not. And so, yeah, it's a different ball game here. You know, you tell people how good you are and they'll tell you how much of a wanker you are.
Well, see, there is a distinction there. That, like, I would say if someone is just pounding their chest and saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, I'm great, they deserve to be called a wanker.
Yeah.
But there's a way to, you know, and at least I can't say it's universal, but what I try to profess and what is a good etiquette is to provide value in your communication. And I try to teach folks to take their time with their social media marketing. And time doesn't mean do it slowly. That means TIME stands for teach, inform, motivate, or entertain. If you're going to do a post, it should fit one of those 4 letters. And those types of posts tend to resonate, and they get a little less criticism than the ones that just say, look at me, I'm great.
Yeah, it's true. In fact, there's a guy that I watch his podcast all the time. It's a video podcast, a guy called Warren Hewitt. And he has a podcast called Produce Like a Pro. And he pumps out about 5 videos a week. And they're really good. And what he does is what you were talking about. It's like informing and teaching. Like, he is talking about production of music, and he will get experts to run through how do you engineer this? How do you master that? How do you produce that? How do you use this instrument? That kind of stuff. So that's why he's working. It's not about him saying, look at me, I'm great. But the fact is, his profile now is massive.
That's an amazing tactic that he's using to shine the light on someone else, to provide information of value, or to educate his following. And that's how he gets that ripple effect, because he's providing good information and incorporating other expert people. It's helping him grow.
Yeah.
Worked for me.
Well, it has worked for you, George.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at all the episodes you did with Dan, and then now you're doing, you know, this one here. And who was one of the first people I called when I did my podcast? You.
Yeah, it was me, which I felt really honored. It was really neat to rekindle that connection again, you know. But yeah, when you put out good, useful content to a lot, you know, over time with a lot of consistency, that is some of the best marketing that I can afford to do. You know, traditional marketing for me isn't going to work. I got myself listed in this guide in LA. I won't name it, but it's the one that's in all the agents. It's on all the studios. And, you know, and I paid $1,000 for this ad, you know, and I'm like, oh, finally, I'm in this book. You know, I've never been in. I'm finally in this hard copy, been around forever, the ultimate guide for voiceover who wants to, you know, get a studio or a talent, whatever. Have I got a single call from that ad that's been in circulation for 4 months? No, not a single one. Nothing. I mean, will I get one in 2 years? Yeah, maybe. Will it pay for itself? Probably not. I don't know. But all of the other stuff, all that grassroots, word of mouth, putting yourself out there, helping people, and talking and being in the conversation is what's worked for me.
The social is the new word of mouth. It's just done a little different, and it's done fast. The whisper
fast
down the lane is just turbocharged now.
Yeah, exactly. It's on turbo. It just spreads way more rapidly. The good and the bad, too.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
Keep your nose clean, kids.
George, do you find you get much work out of your podcasts, VOBs and this?
Yeah. I mean, I when people book my services, I literally have a thing in my booking form. How'd you hear about me? Which to me is very, very important. And so people almost always will type something in there, Might be from VOBS, might be from Pro Audio Suite, might be a referral from a demo producer or an agent or another voice actor. Or sometimes it says, are you kidding me? Everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
About you everywhere.
What do you mean you don't know who I am?
Yeah.
I know it sounds terrible for me to say it out loud. I'm like,
I said it. It's okay.
But it says it. They'll say them. They're like, and what it is, they've just been waiting for the opportunity to make that, take that step or make the investment to work with me. So, I'm very lucky. I came along like you do, Corey. You came in on the ground floor with a great business and knew something was good and went with it. And that's what I did with this too. And it was the right time. And met some really great people very, very early on, like Howard Parker and Lane Massey and yourself and Paul.
And who would have think we'd come full circle and we'd be doing these little podcasts together with a new mate in Australia, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Right?
So now, if anyone wants to get in contact with you, Corey, where can they get you for either marketing or getting spots produced?
So the easiest way, I mean, obviously check me out on LinkedIn, Corey Dissin on LinkedIn, but for my personal sites, CoreyDissin.com, or this new one I'm navigating people to is called Corey'sFightClub.com. And Fight Club has a meaning. It's another sort of acronym, CLUB, which is career coaching, life management, understanding attrition, and being positive. And that's kind of what I try to preach. That's my message. And people can go to Corey'sFightClub.com.
Cool. Okay. And if they want to get a hold of you for producing any spots?
Go to ProMediaLabs.com. It's the easiest way to find us. Propulsion Media Labs is the company. Ask for me. They'll put you right through. I'm nobody special. I'm just the lowly GM. I'll take care of you.
Excellent. Well, look, I've got to say thank you for joining us today. It's been wonderful. In fact, an eye-opener. And we'll see how it plays out into the future, because I'll definitely be getting in contact with you.
Well, please do. And both of you guys have been so generous with your time. I mean, mostly when I get asked to do a podcast, it's like, hey, we're just going to have you on for 15 minutes or so. I mean, you guys literally have spent over an hour with me. I feel very lucky to have you guys in my sphere, and just fortunate that we got a chance to hang out and chat.
Thank you. And it's been an absolute pleasure, and we agree wholeheartedly. And it's good to see a couple of old mates getting back together again.
That was the Pro Audio Suite. If you have any questions or ideas for a show, let us know via our Facebook, the Pro Audio Suite Podcast.
You look for trouble.